Hello and welcome everybody to a Buy Round November 1 special edition with two of the leading journalists, especially when it comes to breaking player movement news. We've got all the inside scoops. They've got their ear to the ground when it comes to breaking these stories. We are joined by Michael Chammas and Brent Reid. Gents, how are we?
Jimmy, good to be here, mate.
Exciting time of year, Jimmy.
It is.
For us, it is anyway.
Christmas for us,
and for the punters.
It is. It is. The transfer window is officially open for season 2026, so meaning that clubs, players, managers can actually hold those formal conversations and negotiate for their players' future. And like every year, there'll be moving parts, there'll be shock switches, release requests, the dreaded tap on the shoulder. The domino effect will be in full force. Clubs that will be in for one player, they miss out, they turn their attention to somebody else. We will have player options that maybe we don't know about yet, although they seem to be in the public domain. One player that fits the bill from what I've just mentioned is Ben Hunt for season 2025. Now, this is being recorded on Halloween, October the 31st. Thanks for dressing up as well, by the way, guys. I've got my mask on, ready for trick-or-treating already tonight, so came prepared. Ben Hunt, where do we feel as if, or where he will land? Obviously, this is released Sunday. Do you think we'll have a decision by then?
I'm not well. He's away with the Australian team. I'm not sure it'll happen that quickly. But I think the Dolphins are the obvious one. They've got money. They've got a desire to sign Ben Hunt. They've made that patently clear in recent months and weeks. And I think they're probably at the front of the queue to speak to him. But they're not the only one. I mean, he's been linked with several clubs. The Broncos rumoured to be looking at the situation. Clubs in Sydney as well. He's going to have some options. That's the thing for Ben. That's what you want when you're on the open market, and he's going to have some options. But I think the Dolphins are the ones for me. They're the obvious ones because he'd like to go home, and he's going to go home. That's the club that's got money, real money to fit him in.
But you know what's interesting about this? At no point has it been mentioned he was released on compassionate grounds to move home.
Well, because they went to him and said, if you want to release, because he's obviously been asking for a while now to leave the club, and they finally succumbed the Dragons. They said, enough, it's been a circus for so long, and said to him, if we're going to do this, this is on our terms, and it means you agree to a mutual termination, and we do not pay a cent of your $950,000. That's why it happened yesterday. It happened on Wednesday, the day before his payment at the club was ceasing for the year, and he would have started his new contract for 2025. They didn't want to pay a cent of that. So they executed that deal pretty quickly. And it means now, because he's agreed to a mutual termination, the clubs will, he's going to forego probably a couple $100,000. Yes. I don't think anyone gives him $950, Jimmy.
No,
That's how much he wanted to get out of the Dragons. He was willing, because he could have said, oh no, well, let me strike a deal with someone first, got the Dragons to chip in. There wasn't any of that.
Or even if you think about it, Ben won't be, wherever he's playing next year, even if he just stayed at the Dragons, he won't be involved in that football club until January. Yeah. So that's 2 months worth of wages
160
that the
grand.
Dragons have saved themselves, and that another club is likely going to have to part their ways with.
Well, they've saved themselves 900 grand because that's what he's on next year. So they've saved themselves his entire salary. And as I said, I don't think, money's not the issue. It would seem it's not the issue for Ben because he knows he's going to cop less on the open market, I would think. I don't think there's a club out there that can pay him, maybe the Dolphins aside, that can pay him 900 and whatever it is next year. So that, as Mick said, that's how much he wanted to get out of the Dragons.
Well, hang on. Is there not rules in place at the NRL
Yeah.
that's saying he can't sign below a certain value? Because there's one club I'm thinking of that he could potentially land that need a halfback.
Who's the club, Jimmy? You talking?
Well, we know it's the Sydney Roosters. They usually
they've signed Chad Townsend. They have,
but he's
Ben Hunt's an upgrade on Chad
Townsend.
That's fair to say, isn't
it? Sam Walker missing until at least the middle of May.
August, yeah.
Like perfectly timing in and around Origin. If he signs at that club for for less than market value at $950, which you would have been at the Dragons, you can understand why the casual fan at home will be disgruntled with that.
Yeah, but the way it works, right? Because there's a mutual termination, the NRL will now put a market value on Ben Hunt. So let's say, for example, the Panthers wanted to sign him at $350 because he wanted to win a comp. That's all well and good. They could pay him 350, but the NRL will put a value on him at whatever they deem his market value is. Let's say it's 750. I think that's probably fair. You think he'll come in around the sevens? 750. I don't think the NRL will say he's a $900,000
and that goes in the cap,
player.
so that will go in their salary cap, even though they might only pay him 350.
Yes,
the notional value goes in their salary cap.
Yeah,
but there's other factors, Jimmy, because if a club gives him an extension, he's allowed to take a drop in pay. For example, Daniel Safidi, when he went to the Dolphins, because he took an extension, because he got an extension out of that deal, he was able to sign on less money when he went to the Dolphins because he got an extra year out of it. So they will make some allowances around that. And Ben will get an extension out of this. So because of that, the notional value might drop a little bit more. But Mick's right. I mean, the notional value is going to be at least $600,000-$700,000.
I think for an experienced half in this market with the salary cap, with the value that it is, I think there's 9 to $1 million is market value. And again, it's who's going to pay. Like, I'm of that opinion. What would a Cherry Evans be taking home?
But you made the point earlier. He's not back till January. So no one's rushing in. Well, they'll obviously try and sign him and he wants to get paid as soon as he can. But let's say nothing gets done until January. Suddenly, $750. That equates to pro rata a $900,000, $900,000 deal anyway. So
I think the other thing is, Jimmy, you're talking about a guy. Okay, you might think it's $950, whatever. You're talking about a guy who's 35 next year. 36. There'll be some allowance given for his age, and I would think when the NRL sits down to deem that notional value, I mean, they'll look at the age. As I said, the fact he gets an extension out of it, and I don't think they won't put him at $900,000. That won't be his notional value.
Okay, well, Ben Hunt is moving on. Whichever club he goes to, there's somebody in the halfback position there. So let's say he goes to a Dolphins, or even if he doesn't, but he's been muted to go there. Isaiah Katoa.
No, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I know he's not going anywhere. But is he going to sit behind him for 2 years?
No, he'll play in the halves with Ben Hunt. That's the plan. He would play in the halves with Ben Hunt.
But all the talk has been over the last couple of years, and the criticism of Ben is that perhaps he's not an organising 7 anyway. Like that, the Dragons, when they needed him, as much as he created, he wasn't an organising 7. Perhaps he goes there as the 6, Jimmy, and he helps Katoa become the 7 long term for that football club. I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility that he's the 6 at the Dolphins.
And you look at Nick Arima's got some versatility around him. He's played 6. Sean O'Sullivan, I would imagine Sean might have a look around if Ben Hunt arrives there. So, I think you could easily play Katoa and Hunt in the halves together.
The interesting one is the Dogs, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I think they made inquiries and they thought he was too much money. But that's when there was conversations that he was going to be at the Dragons and you'd have to strike a deal. I wonder if they come in and if his value is a lot less. I wonder if the Dogs think maybe we're in a premiership window here.
They're a bit of a wild card, aren't they? Because, I know we'll get to him later, but they've been linked with Ryan Pappenhausen as well. There's a few blokes who've been linked with the Dogs, and Ben's one of them.
With signing Ben, obviously you've mentioned it's not just for season 2025. It's going to be an extension. That then inhibits your ability to go and sign a marquee player, or significantly you reduces your ability to go after a marquee player for season 2026, which is what we're going to be talking about very soon. One of those players in the immediate knock-on effect aftermath, it appears Clint Gutherson is going to be nailed on at the Dragons in a fullback / 5'8" role.
Fullback, from what I gather. I asked Shane Flanagan on Friday, interviewed him last week at a function after a function at the Dragons at Cogra, and he said the plan is to play him fullback, and that means Tyrell Sloan to the wing. That was before the Ben Hunt stuff unfolded. He may be in a situation where he can't find a half before the start of the season, and he might tinker with the fact that Gutherson could be 6 alongside Kyle Flanagan at 7. But he signed him with the intention of playing fullback. And, let me rephrase that. As we're sitting here right now, they haven't signed him. But he has to undergo a medical and pass that. And, with the Dragons and medicals, anything can happen. We know what happened with Ronald Volkman.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. So that would mean, again, some of the ramifications of that. If Gutherson is to go there and play in that fullback role, Tyrell Sloan would then become a winger or a backup.
Flano said he wants to play him on the wing. He thinks he could learn from him for a couple of years and then play on the wing. The intention is to sign Gutherson for 3 years. That's a long time to learn for Tyrell Sloan. And I don't know. I see where you're going with this. Are we thinking that Tyrell Sloan enters the market as well if he's not happy?
Potentially, or if he goes to the wing, that then puts them out of the market for Josh Adokar.
Yeah.
if he becomes available,
Yeah.
which he is available for season 2026, but potentially available for 2025.
Well, he's been available for 25 because they're giving him permission to look around. So, as we speak, he's about to front the board tonight. And look, all the talk is they're going to terminate his deal. But he's available for 25 regardless of what the outcome of that. But
Yeah, I would be surprised. The talk out of the Dragons is they need to move a winger on, and they've given Michaela Ravalawa the tap on the shoulder.
they've been trying to move him for so long.
That's what I'm saying. So
and
if they don't move him, they
Yeah.
just don't know. Can you have Ravalawa, Tuapolotu, Tyrell Sloan? Is one of the Fino brothers still there as well? And then Adokar, you got 5 wingers. Like it just doesn't work for the Dragons. So he's not the priority at the moment.
That dreaded tap on the shoulder, hey, for all the stick that the players get for aggravating releases.
Yep.
The clubs do plenty of it.
I don't think
McKaylee's
too worried about it, apparently.
Yeah.
They were trying to track him down the other week. I don't think he'd answer his phone. He's not stupid.
He's on Fiji time at the moment.
So he's
and
not
that's
worried.
all right. He's on
going
his holidays. The RLPA fought very hard for that mandatory time off.
That's
And
right.
they're allowed to have that. I don't begrudge a player for having some time off in the off season. Let's get into it. November 1, players that are available. We've got the fullback position to kick things off, headlined by Ryan Pappenhausen, James Tedesco, potentially into retirement or maybe a 1-year extension. We've got Will Kennedy at the Sharks, Charles Nickel-Cluckster off at the Canberra Raiders, Clint Gutherson here as well, but it looks like his future will be sorted. A couple of decent other players as well. Xavier Savage, Blake Taff, Tua Pickey from the Warriors, and Dane Laurie. Headlined, Ryan Pappenhausen.
Well, he's the big one, isn't he? And Melbourne thought that this was just about nailed down, but obviously it hasn't gone as quickly as I'd hoped.
That was they offered him, it's correct in what we've read,
a reduction.
From 1.1 to 750.
What's your understanding of it? Is it? I got told it was 8. What's your understanding reading?
Well, I haven't got an exact figure on it, Mick. I mean, he's obviously been on big money. I think he was on over 900 this next year. Sorry, and look, I can understand the Storm going down that path because he's also got some deals off the field as well. I mean, he makes well over $1 million in Melbourne because he's got off-field endorsements.
But those endorsements would travel with him, though.
Well, potentially. I mean, he's a big sell in Melbourne, right? Because you're not competing with 8 other clubs in Melbourne, right? And he's he's probably maybe the biggest face down there. Of the Storm, the most popular guy. They've got other guys
in
there.
New South Wales and
But
Sydney.
would he be as marketable as in Melbourne? Given I don't
He's
know,
competing with
Jimmy.
a lot more players here in Sydney, and
exactly.
I think the brands that have linked with him, the intention is to boost their profile in Melbourne. So I think he'll lose a few, but he'll gain a few.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated by this. I think this is going to be the story of the off season.
He's
I
an
really
interesting
do.
one, right? Because as he's on big money at Melbourne, they've offered him less to stay. And I sort of can halfway understand why they've done it. I mean, they've paid him a lot of money for a long time, and he's missed a lot of footy. And they've shown him a lot of loyalty. And look, he's rewarded them in many respects. But I can understand why the cap's tight down there. They've signed Stefano. They've got a young peasant who's about to re-sign and stay. They've got a lot of money committed to their spine, to Harry, to Cam Munster, to Jerome Hughes. So money's really tight down there.
And I suppose if you're Melbourne Storm, look.
And they've got Sua Farlongo in the system.
This is the point where when you've got such a quality replacement already there, they don't have to go to the market and go, oh, if we lose Paps, do we bring in a Kennedy? Do we bring in a Nickel-Cluckster?
Well, the other issue they got, Jimmy, is if Paps stays, there's a gentleman's agreement that Sua can have a look around.
Yeah.
So, it's a big decision.
The suitors would be lying. He would be, I believe, almost as attractive as Pappenhausen.
Yeah, there's a few. There are a few clubs watching that situation.
Yeah,
pretty
they're
closely.
waiting, and they're going to pull the trigger on Paps or Sua Farlongo if that falls over.
I think it's. I think his partner's from Sydney.
Yeah.
I think his family. Well, his obviously family is still in Sydney. Interesting that it's come out that his family, I think, and Ryan were Dogs fans as kids. I think the Dogs have
Smells a little bit, doesn't it?
expressed interest in having that conversation with Ryan Pappenhausen and what that potentially looks like. That is an incredible signing for the Dogs if they can pull that off. He would just take them into that premiership window overnight.
How greater improvement is it from what Bulldogs currently have in Connor Tracy?
Well, I think he's a better footballer than Connor. With due respect to Connor Tracy, he's a really good footballer, right? But I think Ryan's perhaps is a better fullback than Connor Tracy. I mean, Connor Tracy has played a variety of positions, right? A bit of centre, bit of wing, and he did a good job for them last year. But perhaps is different gravy, right? I mean, he's a really intelligent footballer, and I think he would change them, as Mick said. When you consider their obviously Toby Sexton's a halfback. They don't really have an elite class half, right? But you chuck Pappenhausen in, and he makes everyone around him better.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Who else would be in the queue for Pappenhausen?
I think
Parramatta.
No, I think I asked the question of Parramatta. Yeah. I think they've spent too much money on Isaiah Yongi to go down that path now.
Okay,
perhaps I think they've offered him $450 next year, Jimmy. Isaiah Yongi to replace Clint Gutherson as their fullback, and they've also bought Joash Papali from the Bulldogs. So they've got themselves covered there. To me, like obviously I'm not a coach, but I would still pull the trigger on Ryan Pappenhausen. Jason Riles has a great relationship with him from their time in Melbourne together. It makes a lot of sense for the Eels to do it. The conversations that I've had with the club, though, it doesn't seem like they're going to go down that path. Yeah. That they're content with Isaiah Yongi, and they think he's going to be someone who will be special to them for a long time. The other one I'm thinking is on our list here. I don't know what Reedy's heard, but I'm hearing murmurs around Will Kennedy's future.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's as secure at the Sharks as we might have thought originally. They obviously haven't gone past the second week of the finals for a number of years. He's a free agent November 1. What happens with Will Kennedy? And do the Sharks have a play at Ryan Pappenhausen? Yeah. Do they have the money to do it? They were pretty quiet with Adam Fanua-Blake. They managed to keep that very quiet and get a deal done. Yeah. Or do they move Will Kennedy on and Nico Hines becomes the fullback? Because there's a lot of talk around Nico Hines' ability to handle those pressure cooker moments at number 7. So they're in the middle of some serious consideration. They've got a number of players who are free agents. We'll get through them over the next, they're free agents right now.
Yeah.
Teague Wilton, Ronaldo Mulatalo, Britton Nakora,
Braden
Trindle, Will Kennedy. And there are a number of players who I haven't mentioned there. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Cronulla Sharks are sitting back thinking, what do we do right now with our roster, and where does Will Kennedy fit if we're keeping all these guys?
Well, they're mad if they don't look at it right. I mean, the issue for Ryan is there's not a lot of clubs that desperately need fullbacks at the moment, but they are one, I reckon, that lack a truly elite fullback. I mean, I think Will Kennedy's a really good footballer, a serviceable fullback. When you talk about the elite fullbacks in our game, I don't think he's really taken the strides forward they'd hoped he would in the last few years. And look, I'm with Mick. I think they're mad if they're not looking at Ryan Pappenhausen. The issue is, I think they're cap. When you got Fanua-Blake, if he's not on a mill, he's pretty close to it. You got Nico's on a mill. They're going to have to upgrade Trindle, upgrade Nakora. They've got a lot of money already spent, and they've got Cam McInnes, the other guy who's a November 1 guy. They're going to have to spend a lot of money to keep a lot of those guys. And one position's Blake Brayley's on big money long term as well. So, if I'm Fitzy, I'm trying to find out a way I can make it work.
And you might have to say,
don't know if it's too hard.
It's probably a greater look into their development system and say, like, well, who's coming up that we can have?
Well, I got Kade Dykes, I think, as a fullback in the system who's had some injuries.
Well, the elephant in the room, and I think Buzz mentioned it on 360 before the end of the season, is Nico Hines.
Yeah.
I think he alluded to the fact that maybe some people were questioning whether or not that deal was too much for too long. Another year of Nico Hines and some wobbles. I wonder what happens with Nico Hines and the Sharks.
Just back to Pappenhausen quickly. James Tedesco got 1 year left. Is there a possibility of the Roosters making a play
at Pappenhausen?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think they'd be too loyal to James Tedesco. I think Trent Robinson.
But if Tedesco chooses to retire,
he doesn't. He's told the club he wants to.
He wants to.
They're talking about 1 year deals continuing on with Tedesco. Yeah. He's contracted for next season. His management already had conversations with the club about what that 26 looked like. The Roosters want to keep him. It's now working out what you pay. How old is he? I don't know how old he is. He's a 30-something-year-old.
Early 30s.
What do you pay James Tedesco in his 30s in 2026? That's the conversation. I don't think the conversation is, do we let him go? Because the Roosters are quite happy with the way he performed this year. He was close to winning the Dally M. He was one of the best players in the competition. So I'd be stunned if the Roosters
I think Teddy will sign an extension there and stay at least one more year beyond 25.
Is there any other the fullbacks on the list that getting traction from other clubs so far? It'll just be a case of wait and see.
I think Chance is going to stay at the Warriors. I think Xavier Savage, if he hasn't already agreed to terms at Canberra, he's just about done it. And then really they're the other guys who I think would be in the conversation. But yeah, Chance doesn't want to leave Auckland from what I'm told. And Xavier Savage got a deal on the table from the Raiders that I think they expect him to take up. And he's a winger now anyway, I think Xavier Savage.
I think it'll be Terrell Sloan.
Terrell Sloan
I just have a feeling that 3 years is a long time for him to sit back and not play fullback. If he wants to play fullback, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a conversation with George Mimas, his agent, and the club, and says
the issue is, Mick, where does he play? Like, is there a fullback? Is there a club in the game where he walks in? I don't think there is.
Well, I think
even the struggling clubs, the Tigers have got Jerome Buller on a long-term deal, and he's a better player than Terrell Sloan, with due respect to Terrell.
Yeah.
Parramatta signed Iongi. They struggled last year. I don't see the Gold Coast have got, God, how many fullbacks have they got? They've got 100 of them.
It is such an important position, and that's it. In terms of some of the jigsaw of where people go and these taps on the shoulders or lack of first-grade opportunities, Sloan might be affected by that. You know, the fullback position at the Gold Coast, Keanu Keeney, almost came from nowhere, which then leaves the predicament of what to do with AJ and what to do with Campbell.
Well, Campbell can play 6.
He has to,
if need be.
I know the Dragons when they were talking about looking at a Ben Hunt swap, they were keen on Jaden Campbell.
Yeah,
the Titans told him to get stuffed, but they were keen on Jaden Campbell.
AJ's the interesting one there, right? Because they played him a little bit at centre last year, and I don't think this season, I don't know that he really enjoyed it. And again, he's on a long-term deal on big money, and you know, if Campbell plays 6. And Kenny's got to be a fullback now. AJ feels like AJ's the one who's...
It's not up for debate who's playing fullback there.
Yeah, AJ, he's on a long-term deal, though. There were some whispers, and I asked the Titans about it 2 months ago, that he may have been someone who was expendable, but they said, no, he's part of our plans.
He's a Gold Coast kid, AJ, so I don't know. They're one to keep an eye on, I reckon.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's move on to the wing. Probably not as exciting as the fullback position, headlined by Ronaldo Mulatalo. We've got Jojo Fafita, Christian Tuipulotu, Blake Wilson, Alex Johnson, most likely retire. Ronaldo, where are we thinking he will end up? Or is it likely he'll stay at the Sharks?
Yeah, if I'm Jason Rolls, I'm having a red hot go at Ronaldo. Now, Rolls, he wants speed. You know, I think Ronaldo is one of the best wingers of the game. He wants to be paid like it, right? That's part of the issue. He wants to be paid like an elite winger.
What's that, really?
600's an elite winger, right? 650, I think it's the top wingers in the game.
And he can't get that at the Sharks?
Not by the sounds of it, no. But if you're any club, right, wingers are so important in the modern game with getting on the front foot early and tackle counts. He's as good as any of them.
Yeah.
So I think any club that's got any brains will have a go at Ronaldo.
Well, the one attribute that Ronaldo brings, he competes.
Yeah.
Which is
he's an elite winger.
That is hard to come by. Difficult to coach. It's naturally instilled in him.
Well, I think the discrepancy over the years between wing and centre money, it's starting to reduce. I'll bring up the spreadsheet.
Oh, you got the benchmark?
We'll have a look at the benchmarking.
You love the benchmark.
We do like a good benchmarking document, so I'll gibber away while I bring up the document. But, look at Brian Toy. There were whispers a few months ago that he may have been looking for more money or an opportunity. I think the wingers are starting to realise their value in the game, and I think it's definitely shifting. It's definitely shifting. Here we go. I've got the spreadsheet up now here, Jimmy. The average top 5 winger in 2024 earned a salary of $600,000, $597. The average centre earned, this is just throwing my theory away. The average centre, top centre, earned $855,000.
Centres get more traditionally.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll start to see that switch. I think that the contribution of a winger now is probably undervalued based off that.
Yeah, but they would have had Lomax as a centre in that number. Yeah. And he was on big money.
Well, he's a centre, isn't he?
I don't know.
He's going to Parramatta as a centre.
So, I think
something he doesn't know.
I think he's playing hooker next year.
The old I'll play anywhere.
You know what? If I'm a club, I'd be having a red hot go at Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Because I think, as I said, he's an elite centre. And and he's the best one on that list of centres, Jimmy. And the other intriguing one's Tyrone Munro, right? South made him an offer. He brings a different attribute. It's pure speed that Tyrone Munro brings. He's a finisher. He's young. And I think they've tabled a 3-year extension to him, Mick. Two maybe. And at the moment, I think there's a little bit of a gap there. So, I think he's a guy who could potentially be up for grabs as well.
Because South Sydney, from what I gather, they're pretty tight with what they have to spend. They were in a bit of they had not much room to move. Then they signed Lewis Dodd with not a lot of room to move. Now Damien Cook has moved on. I'm trying to think who else at the time.
Potentially Ilias to move on.
Well, it's looking more and more likely that he's going to stay. I know a lot can happen over the next few months, but Wayne's indicated to him, and he's indicated to Wayne. There was a talk about a swap deal with Lockie Ilias and Jackson Hastings. And Lockie Ilias actually rang Wayne and said, "I want to stay. My preference is to stay." And Wayne said to him, "Well, if you want to stay, you stay. I'm not forcing you out. The door's open if you want to leave, but you're also welcome here." And he's decided for now that he'd rather play back up at Souths than go to Newcastle.
Is there anybody on the list of wingers that we've got here that you think a club could move quickly on? It is Ronaldo by streets in terms of
I think Jojo
talent.
Fafita's a bit underrated though, Jimmy. I think that the Titans are working really hard to keep Jojo, and I think they'll get a deal done as well there. I don't expect him to leave, but I know he's a good footballer. He's young, can play a bit of centre as well. I know they've got a high opinion of him, so he's a guy that if he stays on the market for any longer, that some clubs might come in for.
Parramatta made inquiries with Blake Wilson. They asked the Bulldogs if they could try and bring him across to Para, and the Bulldogs had signed Marcelo Montoya, so they thought there was an opportunity there, but the Bulldogs decided they want to keep Blake Wilson. But I don't think that's the last we've heard of that. I think Jason Riles has a rap on Blake Wilson. So for now, dead in the water, but keep an eye on that one.
Well, one of the positions that it's got so many moving parts. Madge Maguire's got his work cut out here. He's got Katoni Staggs, Ansel and Cobbo. Just underneath them, Will Penasini with a player option, Bronson Cherry available, Tommy Talau. They're the top 5. Guys, we'll start at the situation at the Broncos. Can they afford to keep both of them?
Well, it depends what Selwyn's willing to take, I think. Staggs is their priority, and I think they'll lock him away. The issue is going to be what Cobbo expects and what his management expect. I mean, he's already been...
Well, they're expecting $1 million,
and they're ringing around...
Cobbo's expecting...
That's the talk, yeah.
And they're doing the rounds.
Fullback
they've been ringing around doing the rounds, so, trying to drum up interest in Selwyn, but... it's going to depend on what Selwyn wants.
They've been put to the Roosters.
Yeah.
I think the Roosters
he's been linked
with
the Roosters for a long time, hasn't he, Mick?
Yeah. They're wary, though. With all fairness to Cobbo, the rap isn't the greatest on his... not that his off-field behaviour, but his attitude and commitment levels. Yeah. It's the question is whether or not he has the commitment to get the best out of him. He's got potential, but... And does that work with the way Michael Maguire wants to run his football team? There were whispers, and the Broncos are saying they're waiting to see, but the whispers that Michael Maguire may be open to Cobbo leaving, that he might not suit that style of that intensity that he brings. So
that drill sergeant style training, military, like drill. Yeah. We conform with lack of individual.
Just discipline. Just discipline, Jimmy. Right? I mean, that's Selwyn obviously. It was pretty well documented this year, some of the issues he had. And, there are obviously rumours about the Queensland team and his position in the Queensland team and all that sort of stuff. And I think the issue is...
Didn't the Queensland team think it came from New South Wales camp?
Yeah.
Who was coach again?
There you go.
Oh, well, hold on.
Wow. There is the rumour is out there that it came. The rumours came from New South Wales. They've got some work to do there in terms of patching that relationship up, or at least... getting to the bottom of it. But
what I'd find really hard, Jimmy, is to see Selwyn leave South East Queensland. I think, I think Sydney would be a really tough environment for Selwyn Cobbo. And I'd be, if I'm a Sydney club, I'd be concerned about trying to get him down here and in this environment down here, because I think, do talk to people in Brisbane, they'll tell you that, Selwyn might one day just up and walk away from the game itself. I mean, that's the sort of guy he is. It's not his overriding.
Not too just like a Jamie Lyons style.
Exactly.
I just don't.
So
really.
and I would have thought the Dolphins would have been a good club for Selwyn, but I don't think they need They don't need outside backs.
No.
At Gold Coast maybe, but again, we spoke about AJ Brimson before and the fact how they fit him in. So the issue for him is, he was linked with the Cowboys, but the Cowboys said that's not happening. I just find it hard to see Selwyn in Sydney.
Well, I don't think my read on this, I don't think they want Sydney. They want an offer from Sydney. I just think that they need someone to show interest. And reality is, I don't think the Dolphins, I don't think with the Hammersaw at the Dolphins, with Kinney and Campbell at the Titans, those offers don't come there.
No.
They
Not
have
for
to come from
fullback
Sydney.
money. No. Not for fullback money.
And maybe he gets fullback money from a Sydney club, but I think they all think that he won't come. They all think that he needs to be around his group.
I reckon he ends up
his
staying in
friends and
Brisbane he'll take less than stay in Brisbane. I think that's the most, because I think, as I said, Katoni's their priority, and I think they're a long way down the path with Katoni Staggs.
You think so? You don't think there's a team coming to the party for Katoni Staggs?
I think Katoni wants to stay, from what I'm told, and there's no desire to leave. And I think they'll pay him well, right? Because he's an elite centre, and I think they know that he's their immediate priority to get him done. So it leaves Selwyn vulnerable, but to other clubs. But like Mick said, I don't necessarily think Selwyn wants to come to Sydney.
Mm-hmm. What about Will Penasini?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Option in his favour for 2026. Another one of these Eels players with options. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
You love them.
Well, they had 5 or something in there.
Oh, man.
It was, and as a club, they've recognised that. We had lunch with Jason Riles at a Chinese restaurant not too long ago, Reedy and I, and we actually asked him, what are you going to do about these player options? And it's going to be hard to get them reversed or convince anyone to take them out of their contract. But they're going to hinder what he does. And Will Penasini, he's on big money. He's on big money over the next couple of years. And I don't think there's any doubt he'll take up his option, because I don't think he'll get paid that. I'm hearing he goes high sevens towards the end of his deal.
If Lomax is there to play centres, that's a lot of money in your centres.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Yeah. So I think he takes up his option because he doesn't.
You don't see a club
paying him more? No, Jimmy.
Paying him the same?
No, not at this point. Like, he's developed nicely, but would you put him in the top 5, top 10, even centres in the game? No,
Do you think rugby's more of a threat for him, not in 25, but down a bit beyond that?
Maybe.
His mates with Joe Suoli, maybe he moves to rugby, maybe sees what Joe does and goes to rugby down the track, but not for 25.
But I don't think he's a marquee man. I don't think rugby paid big money anyway,
No.
really. I think in 26 with his option, he stays at Parramatta because no one gets close to it. And they thought, look, I'm not saying he's a bad player, but he's been good for him. But I just don't think he's reached the level of what they thought that he would, and the money they've invested in him.
He's still young though. I mean, he's still young, still learning the game.
Yeah,
if he has a real strong start to season 2025, because the options available around, he's going to make a call by round 10.
I don't know if it is with him. I don't want to speak out of school, because I know Dylan Brown, his option is round 10. He has to take it up by. Yeah. You'd assume a different manager, but same club. That would have been a similar arrangement, but I haven't been able to get that confirmed. So, yeah, I think he'll take that up.
Bronson Cherry stay at the Dogs on an improved deal.
Right. Well, you'd hope so. Yeah. I mean, he's been really good for them, and I imagine he came back on decent money, did he, Mick?
I think he signed for 300. He might be on 350 this year, but the talk is that he's going to extend there. They've pretty much got an offer. Well, they have got an offer on the table. I don't think he intends to leave. They've been, he said he's been good for them. They've also been good to him. If anything comes left field and someone pays him silly money, then maybe he walks. But at the moment, it looks like it's a foregone conclusion that he'll be at the Dogs.
5'8" position, not too many
You
around.
left the big one off this list, Jimmy. Dylan Brown.
Well,
we're at centres, mate. What's wrong with you?
Oh,
I was just about to get to it. Dylan Brown with a player option. Okay. Charlie White came up with these lists.
Did he? Charlie's let himself down here, hasn't he?
Missed out the player options, so
he's left out the big one.
Yeah. So Dylan Brown is a big one, headlined by that round 10 player option clause.
He's on big money though. It's going to take a lot of money to get Dylan Brown out of
What would he be, over $1 million?
I think he's on over $1 million.
Yeah, I think it's over $1 million. It goes even further in the next few years. It's a weird option. It's got 2 options within, from what I gather. I don't know if you know any different, Reedy, but he's got an option to take up by round 10, which will give him 26, 27, and maybe 28. Or maybe it's only 2 years. But then he has another option, which will give him the final few years, taking him up till 2031. So even though even if he takes up this option, he can still get out in a few more years. Yeah. So, and it's all all over $1 million.
Yeah.
All over $1 million. And I assume with ratchet clauses.
Is there a club prepared to pay that much?
Ask me when the expansion teams get named.
Yeah.
So, but again, this is for next year, which
Yeah, I don't think in
there's no one coming in for
26 you're talking
for 26. Yeah, sorry for season 2026. Minimum.
Someone will ask the
27.
question, Jimmy. The issue is whether they have the money to be able to get him out of there. But I'm sure clubs will ask the question of Dylan Brown.
And with Dylan Brown, they have to meet that market, that value that he's currently contract.
Well, no,
registered at.
they can. If the Eels want to get rid of him, and the Eels are happy for him to, well, if he doesn't take up the option, and let's say I'll throw out any club, the Roosters want to give him 900. The alternative for Parramatta is he takes up the option at 1.1 when they don't want him. I'm not saying they don't want him.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if they didn't want him, they might strike a deal where we'll pay him $250. We know we've got potentially another 6 years at $1 million. Let's just pay him out, and then the Roosters can chip in. What would likely happen, though, if you're his manager, is that you take up the option and then you work it out later because he's guaranteed $1 million plus for a few more years. So
if he goes somewhere else, does he have to remain on the same length of deal?
he can renegotiate.
Or can he renegotiate for a shorter term?
Well, you could do a shorter term because there's options in that contract,
okay,
right? So, I just he's on so much money. It would take so much money to get him out of there. You know, you're talking, I would imagine 1.4, 1.5 to
Really?
Well, he's on 1.2 or something.
I think it goes up, yeah.
What about a club that would be willing to match it and say, we're going to offer you the same money but with a better opportunity?
But I don't think he doesn't look unhappy to me.
Well, I thought the Warriors could be an option, but I got told he doesn't want to go back to New Zealand. And it all depends on how Parramatta start. Like if you get Regan Campbell-Gillard who's left, Clint Gutherson on the verge of leaving. If they start poorly next year, who's to say Mitchell Moses doesn't kick up a stink? Who's to say that whole place? Like, there's a lot of pressure on Jason Riles, and I hope he does well. I'd like to see him do well. He's taken a number of gambles, and you've got to give him credit for doing so. If they don't start well, with Mitchell Moses having options in his contract in the future and Dylan Brown having options in his future, that could spell danger for Parramatta, and it would dictate what Dylan Brown does in the future. He might want to leave. At the moment, he doesn't.
Well, one of those things with player options is you're relying on the mood of the camp and the mood of the individual at that time. You know, the overwhelming. Any footballer goes through those ups and downs where they're. You
lose control, don't you?
You completely do. It's one of the ramifications of putting those options in. Just on the 5'8" position, is there anyone from this list? We've got Cody Walker, Adam Dewey, Kieran Foran, Daniel Atkinson, Tamari Martin. Anybody?
Dewey and Atkinson, I think.
Yeah.
I think Dewey has been at the Tigers for a long time. He signed a 1-year extension midway through the year. He wants to stay. He wanted to stay. He didn't have anything else. I get the sense that if he found something else, that both parties would be happy for him.
He's been linked with the Dragons. Was it the Dragons?
He's been linked with the Dragons. The Dragons
ago?
have had a conversation internally about it. From what I hear at the Tigers, they'd be open to it. They'd be open to him walking away and going in 2025 immediately. But he needs to find a new deal first. And I think he's on 3 to 350, Reedy, at the Tigers in 25. I think it'd be a good pickup. I think it'd be a great pickup for the Dragons.
Yeah, I thought he came back really well at the end of last year. Atkinson's the other guy who's been linked with the Dragons. Apparently he's on their hit list to replace Ben Hunt. I would imagine they'd be looking to try and get him straight away, right, Mick, rather than wait 12 months for him. But, he's been a decent footballer for Cronulla this year.
You know how the game works. You sign him in 26, agitate to get him out in 25. You know the ones who won't, though. Like Pappenhausen, there's no way in the world Melbourne let Pappenhausen go in 25. They're in a premiership window. They're going to try and win a comp.
Yeah.
But, guys like Dewey or guys like... we spoke about a few others before.
Like an Atkinson could.
There's a conversation to be had.
Yeah. Halfback position. Sam Walker looks as though he'll be extending at the Roosters. One player, or there's a couple in here that I think there'd be some clubs that could potentially build their team around for the future. Braden Trindle and Jonah Pezzett. Pezzett, is he going to re-sign, really?
He is, but I think there'll be conditions around it in terms of what Jerome Hughes does with his future. If Jerome signed till the end of 26, if he extends out, then Pezzett will have like a gentleman's agreement. Like I think he wants it actually in a written agreement that he's got the potential to then leave and go somewhere else. And he's looking at going on loan somewhere.
Is that true that he's looking to go on loan?
Yes. Yeah.
Is it which clubs are we hearing for that?
Well, I don't think it's immediately though. I saw you
No,
both
it was
saying
for
on the weekend.
26 or something. I think
So it was weird. Like,
yeah.
so the way it's worked out, I assumed when I heard about the loan deal that he would want to do it in the next 2 years when Jerome Hughes is still there. But what the Storm have said is if Jerome Hughes extends at this club, we're not going to allow you just to leave. What we'll do is allow you to be loaned out, which then gives the Melbourne Storm protection or something in return. It's like the old soccer loan deal where he doesn't just walk away as a free agent because Jerome stayed. They get something in return. They dictate terms. So they're not just giving him away for free. They're essentially putting a transfer fee on him, aren't they, really? Yeah. It's a smart way of doing things. And if Jerome Hughes extends, they'll be able to dictate whether Jonah Pezzett goes and what they get in return.
It's an interesting one because he's I think he loves being in Melbourne, Jonah Pezzett. When you speak to people in Melbourne, they say he's a real footy head, one of those guys who'll be a coach one day. They love him down there. But Jerome was so good this year for the Storm, so good. You know, it's a wealth of riches, right?
Yeah.
And then you got Cam Munster there as well, so there's no spot in the halves for Jonah Pezzett.
There's no avenue at all.
No.
Because when they re-signed Pappenhausen originally, they said, well, we might look at transitioning you into halfback. That's what I was told. That's not – that obviously when Sua Farlongo re-signed, they told him your path could be to fullback with Pappenhausen moving to halfback one day. That's not going to happen now.
What about Jerome Hughes potentially moving to the back if Pappenhausen leaves? He did start out as a fullback.
With Sua there, I don't think they would do it. Someone's going to have to miss out. Pezzett, Sua.
Well, Munster played fullback as well, remember?
Yes, of
when
course.
When he first played first grade.
Is there a club that's in for Jonah Pezzett
There's a million clubs that are in for Jonah Pezzett. There's so many clubs that are looking at Jonah Pezzett and would love a piece of Jonah Pezzett.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you can name?
Well, the Knights, the Knights have been hovering around Jonah Pezzett for a while. You know, but they're one of many clubs that are looking at Jonah Pezzett.
Yeah.
But as I said, I think there's a long way down the track with the Storm, so I don't think that'll happen.
Sam Walker definitely going to extend at the Roosters. That's done and dusted. Anybody else on that list? There's obviously potentially big holes to fill with Reynolds, DCE retiring, like we said. Tanner Boyd now going to the Warriors.
Ilias and Hastings going to be interesting this year.
Yeah.
The way they play out.
Yeah.
You know, obviously Jackson finished the year in reserve grade at the Knights, and they've shown no inclination to extend him. And obviously Lachlan's in a similar position. Well, he was injured right at the end of the year for South, but again, I'm not sure they've got the money or the appetite to extend Lachlan either. So interesting.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm looking on a story. It's going to be up by the time this is out. That Nathan Cleary's actually accepted a deal with the Wallabies. I just want to see Reedy's reaction for a second.
Wouldn't that put the cat amongst the pigeons? Jesus.
Oh, mate, please.
It's not true. It's not true. Scuttlebutt.
Scuttlebutt.
We'll get on.
That's gibber. That's not scuttlebutt.
We'll get on to hooker. Reece Robson, Brandon Smith, both available. Blake Moser, Sonny Luke, Jaden Brayley. Reece Robson, he'd be big in demand for any club after a great dummy half.
Yeah, great player. From New South Wales, from the Dragon system. They lost him to the Cowboys. I think he'd be a great pickup.
He'll likely stay.
I don't know.
In Townsville?
They spoke to his management 2 weeks ago and said, we want to keep him. We want to sit down once he comes back from Australian camp. He's on big money, huh? Like, he's on big money up there. Over 800, I believe. So
he's probably worth it.
He probably is. And, mate, if I'm a club looking for a hooker, I'm chasing him.
Yeah. It's just whether you think hookers are worth that much in your cap. Yeah. That's all. Like, everyone has a...
There's not many hookers paid that money. Harry?
Exactly.
Harry aside, is there a hooker paid? Or no. Actually, Brandon's the other one who's on huge coin.
If you look at all the hookers, like Penrith have won the comp now 4 years in a row, and they haven't put a lot of money into their hookers. Like even Appy at the time when he was there wasn't on huge money. Mitch Kenny's on 550. Like, it's just how you want to balance your roster, and if you want to spend 800 plus on a hooker, then that's a decision for the club. I think he's the best hooker available by a mile. And
I think Rolsey should be having a go at him. I know he's looking at someone else, but
geez, Matt, it's hard to fit that in when you've got
they just got rid of Gutho. They've got some room. And he comes from the Melbourne system where they spend a lot of money on their spine. Rolsey comes from that system.
True.
Yeah.
So if you
who's Parramatta speaking to in terms of their nine?
Brayley.
Well, Jaden Brayley's been,
yeah.
But with due respect to Jaden, who's a really good player and a fantastic human being, the sort of bloke you want at your football club. Reece Robson's in the Kangaroos squad, and then you said, Wales hooker. He's elite.
So Parramatta are looking for that 9. Brandon Smith, another one, the cheese.
Your good mate.
Where are we up to with him?
Can we be honest here or what?
Of course.
I don't see him at the Roosters beyond next year.
Really?
Jimmy. Yeah.
No, I don't either.
I think they're making plans for life after Brandon Smith. I hear he's in a good headspace and they're happy the way he finished the year, but all the mail that I'm getting out of the Roosters is that next year will be his final year at the club and they'll move in a different direction. Is that
I've heard the same thing. Yeah, I've heard the same thing. So he's an interesting one, Brian, isn't he? Because, I mean, you could sign him as not a lock, but a player who can play hooker and lock for you. He's got a bit of versatility about him. He's on really big money at the Roosters, right? And I think he's going to have to, given the injuries and everything that's been going on in his life, I think he's going to have to take a little bit less money to go somewhere. But if I'm a club, I'm signing Brandon Smith.
Yeah.
You know, I think
is there a club in particular that
you know what, Jimmy? I think just about every club would benefit from Brandon Smith. But the issue is that he's not really your elite hooker, right? He's not a. We spoke about elite hookers before. He's not Harry with the nuance at a dummy half. I mean, he's more that tough, physical style of hooker.
He's probably a 60-minute hooker. So if you have Brandon, you probably need someone else that can fill in at certain stages.
Because he's one of the highest, if not the highest paid hooker in the competition. Like he's
I
on
think Harry might have gone past him.
Yeah, but if you look at last year, I think I'm looking at this spreadsheet here. The top 5 hookers, the average salary was $790. What is it here? $792. Yeah. So he's on 8s from what I gathered next year. I just can't see him remaining at the Roosters.
If I'm a club though, I'm signing Brandon Smith.
I agree.
You know, I think
I agree.
He's a fantastic player, and when he's at his best for the Roosters, they're a better team, right? So, but I don't think there's any rush around Brandon.
Obviously, the injury
doesn't help.
Yeah, it really does hamper him.
And he's not a November one. He's not a guy who signs the next 2 weeks. He'll be a guy that by round 12, if he's killing it, he will attract so much interest in the market that he may go and be one of the top signings of the summer or for next season, and he may get good money. But that's going to be people are waiting to see how he plays next year.
That's it. It's a wait and see. Come back from injury. We'll get on to the front rowers: Josh King, Leo Thompson, big in demand. Fanua Bole, Corey Jensen. Jack DeBellon, who it looks like a year on year. There's some good young players. David Moali, Xavier Willison.
Leo's the one, though.
Willison and Leo Thompson are the two, I think.
They're the two.
Yeah. Leo Thompson, heavily linked with the Bulldogs. Are we thinking that will come to fruition? Because he's knocked... Am I correct in saying he's knocked back an offer from the Knights?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm not sure he's... the offer's still there, right? He's just said, I want to see what's out there for him. And it's a significant offer that gives him an upgrade for 25 as well, which other clubs can't offer him, right? Yes. Because he's contracted them for 25. But the indications are that he's obviously going to explore his options. That's never a good sign, particularly when you've got a good offer on the table.
Yeah,
and he's got
and it's extra money for,
in the short term. So, but the Dogs won't be the only club in for Leo Thompson. He's going to have a heap of clubs in for him.
I think he'll be gone. Yeah, of the names we're going through, I'd say he'd be the one who moves on. I don't think he's overly... Not that he hates the place, I just don't think that he's desperate to stay there. Yeah. You know, this isn't like a Ryan Pappenhausen who wants to stay and trying to make it work and tossing it up. I think he's happy to leave if the opportunity presents itself.
He's more than likely having his head turned on the 1st of November at 1 minute past midnight.
Well, you know, we're all going to pretend that, no, you know, you made the point at the start of the podcast, you know, formal negotiations can begin. You know, who are we kidding? Like these conversations have been happening for ages.
Just about everyone's looking at him. Dolphins, Raiders, Tigers. You name it, they're in for him.
All. But if he leaves the Knights, he's going to want to go to a club that, in all likelihood, can challenge, right?
Chammy's dying over there, right?
No, I'm just trying to get a tissue here, lads. I don't want to be snorting in the... I messaged Tony for a tissue, but he hasn't replied.
Are we thinking he'll go to a club that's in a stronger position than the Knights? Look, I can't see him leaving the Knights to go, for example, to the Tigers, which you mentioned would be in for a front row of his quality. But then with the offer of more money on the table next year, why would you forego that to go, with all due respect, to a club like the Tigers?
Do they let him go immediately? Is he one of those guys that goes now?
Well, his brothers, the other interesting part of this, his brothers at the Knights next year as well. I'd imagine him want to play with his brother or hang out with his brother for 12 months.
So if he doesn't sign that, if he signs somewhere else though, you can be assured that if he stays at Newcastle, they're not upgrading, so he's going to play on next to nothing.
Yeah, he's on 350 or something next year.
So for Newcastle, they're probably thinking, well, why the hell would we let you go? We're going to get you value for great value.
They're not going to let him go for 25. No way.
No.
He's like the Dolphins are in for him, right? He's mates with Daniel Safidi, which makes the Dolphins interesting. Canberra in for him. He started in Canberra. His wife's from Canberra. You mentioned the Dogs, but I'm not sure the Dogs. If the price gets too high, I don't think the Dogs are going to go there.
They're not convinced that spending big money the way the game is going on front rowers is the right move. Like outside of Penrith, because they've had a lot of success, but the front Melbourne, didn't have Nelson. They didn't have a star-studded front row, did they? Like Nelson missed half the season, and they still managed to make a grand final. You wouldn't say the Sharks have a star-studded middle either, and they finished top 4.
Do you think Souths have a good look at him, Mick? I know they're trying to keep Davey Mawali, but Davey's sort of knocked back their initial offer and he's going to go to market and have a look around. Do you reckon that the Souths maybe look at Leo down the track as well?
Yeah, mate.
I think they've got a bit of money in 26, right?
Do they? Is that when it frees up? They're very tight next year.
Yeah, they're very tight next year, but they've got a bit of money in 26, I think. And I think their middles is an area that's been a weakness, right, at South. Yeah. So maybe they look at him as well. And playing under Wayne Bennett, it's a pretty attractive proposition for a lot of footballers.
I definitely agree. The other one, he's not on this list, but is going to be in discussions around movement, is Blake Laurie at the Dragons. They want to move him on.
Yeah.
He's on 6s.
Okay, and they've been trying to move him for months.
I know. And nothing has happened.
Yeah.
The Dragons may get to a point if they want roster spots to make things happen, they'll have to chip in a large portion, but he's on 6s, Jimmy, and I don't know if he's had there's such a priority on leg speed at the moment from these clubs with their middles. I don't know if he has any real suitors at the moment. Blake Laurie, Emre Goulart was sort of looking around leaving.
Yeah,
don't know where that's at. Kobe Hetherington was the one. Has Madge turned around and said, "Mate, we want to see how you."
He's got a meeting with him next week
because they were willing to let him go. Yeah, he was talking to the Tigers.
Yeah, they got a meeting next week between Madge and his manager. They're going to sit down, thrash it out. But I think he's obviously been in talks with the Tigers, and the Tigers are really keen to get him. And they're hopeful that they'll find out next week they've got him. Fanuabola's an interesting one, actually.
He's a very good player.
Yeah. His brother plays for Melbourne. His brother's in the Melbourne system. So I think Melbourne might have a look at him in 12 months.
Surely they can't afford to get him.
Well, 12 months. Christian Welch is potentially off contract at the end of next season.
Is Christian Welch in the mix?
No, I think he's got. I think there's an option.
Those good young players at the Tigers, if they start the year poorly, like they'll be watching what Sean Bloor did at the Melbourne Storm. They'll be watching what Eli Katoa has done at the Melbourne Storm and thinking, are we going to waste the years of our best years of our career of development at a club that continues to struggle? There is such huge pressure on the Tigers to start next year well, with Jerome there and with Sania Taruva and Skelton. Benji's under enormous pressure, and those young kids, and there's no doubt those young kids have so much talent. But if they start strong, if they don't start strong, the noise around Galvin and Pole, it's just going to intensify, and it's going to be deafening for them to deal with.
Just on the front row market, to wrap it up, a guy like Leo Thompson, we said the domino effect is going to be in full swing once he makes a decision. What sort of price do you think he can get to?
Upwards of 7s. I think he'll probably end up getting 8.
Ole or Leo Thompson?
No, Leo Thompson.
Yeah.
You think the value would be 8?
Quality middles, Jimmy, that is a hot market. If you're not a half or a fullback, that's the market.
Well, what did Melbourne pay for Stefano? $750?
Yeah. And he could have got more.
He could have got more.
800 at the Tigers, right? Yeah. So that's what you want to be.
And you'd argue Leo Thompson
Jimmy,
was probably better than Stefano this year.
You've been making a fortune, Jimmy.
Yeah, you were.
Well, even more than you make on the buy round, which is hard to believe.
Mate, have you got a time machine? Get me back in it. All right, back row, headlined Brittany Niokora, Teague Wilton in there, Lemuelu, Kai Pearce-Paul, who's already on big money. Where are we thinking the value is in the back row and the edge back rowers?
Kai's an interesting one, though. Kai Pearce-Paul. I think the Knights happy to keep Kai, but Mick said, he's on really significant money in Newcastle, and
I couldn't see a club playing much more than what he's currently.
He's going to take a pay cut.
He'll take a pay cut.
He's taking a pay cut.
Yeah.
But I think the Knights are it's a significant pay cut, right? Because he's on so much. And I think, look, he's not going to get 770 on the open market, but he might get 600. A club may come in for him at that. And, I don't think we've seen the best of him, Jimmy. I watched a bit of him in England, Super League, and, mate, he's got so much skill. And the offload in his game, the comparisons with Sonny Bill Williams when he was playing in Super League, we didn't see really that side of him at the Knights. So I think we've only scratched the surface of him.
His best years are definitely ahead of him.
Yeah.
We'll get on to lock forward. We got Cam McInnes, Trent Liero will be an interesting one. Kate Mann, Adam Elliott, Tohu Harris, who I can only assume is going to stay in New Zealand. Cam McInnes staying at the Sharks. Can't see him going anywhere. Liero's an interesting one for me.
I think Liero's close to staying at the Storm, Jimmy. I think there was an offer. I think they spoke to him before even the grand final, and they were pretty confident they were going to get a deal done with Trent Liero. So I think he'll stay in Melbourne. McInnes is an interesting one, though, Mick.
It's Cronulla, mate.
Something's got to give there.
Exactly. And they're trying to work out who to keep. Once you keep one, what's the flow-on effect? I'm not convinced with anyone at Cronulla that they're all.
They just can't let go of that leader. They need that. Losing Finucane, and then to lose McInnes.
He's the sort of guy who would take unders to stay anyway.
Yeah, he's a very loyal person. He'd want to stay.
If you're the Dragons, do you have a look at Cam McInnes?
Coming back, you'd be foolish not to.
To play where? Lock? Well, he's not. His days at 9 look like they're done.
Yeah.
So, and they've got Cook and Little.
Yeah.
So,
they've got Cook and,
Yeah.
Who finished the season locked for them? I can't remember.
Was it DeBellin?
He was playing front row.
Eisenhuth.
Cam McInnes brings more
They
than
need some leadership down there as well with Ben Hunt going.
Not a bad shout.
I guess we'll see. All right, we'll go on quick fire. Each and every club. We'll start with the Brisbane Broncos. We're going to say with what each and every club needs. So we'll start with the Broncos. If they're in the market, or are they something that they've got to retain somebody? I'm thinking they've got to look after Stags and then maybe Cobbo.
Yeah, I think the Stags is the big one, but it's out of their hands. What happens with Ezra is going to dictate what they do next. If Ezra Mam is deregistered or he's suspended for a long period of time, everything's on the table.
Yeah,
and obviously Adam Reynolds as well.
Yes.
If he goes around again.
I don't. I think he's close to the end, right? So their halves going to be a real issue if Ezra's depending on what happens with Ezra.
Canberra Raiders.
You know what? They need patience, Jimmy, because they've signed, I think, 5 players from the New South Wales under-19 team. They've got young Ethan Sanders, the young Parramatta kid who's going there to play in the halves. Kaya Weeks is starting to look like a really good footballer.
Chevy Stewart's good.
Chevy Stewart's a gun. Yeah. So I just think they need to be patient.
Middle, though. They need a middle leader to go with Josh Papali'i to retire at the end of the season.
Well, that's why they're looking at Leo Thompson, trying to get Leo Thompson back.
Priority.
He's the dream signing for them, Leo Thompson.
Yeah, I think he's
I think it's probably the same for the Bulldogs, right?
Dogs I reckon Pappenhausen.
You think Pappenhausen's the dream?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
They need to sign forwards, no doubt, but I think they're a superstar away from being a genuine premiership contender, and there's one waiting right there, and they could pay him a lot more than Melbourne can. So if I'm the Dogs, my eggs are in that basket.
That's an interesting one. The Sharks, they've got 15 players off contract.
Wow.
They just need to prioritise and keep your priorities. Right? They need to keep Nakora, keep Trindle, keep a couple of those other guys, McInnes maybe.
Who's your first conversation with? Who is first cab off the rank?
Who
Trindle,
you talk to?
Nakora, who do you want to get done first?
If my honest opinion is the first thing they have to take care of is what's their future with Nico and Will Kennedy, who's playing where, and then you decide after that.
The Dolphins.
Middles, I think they're still looking at the middle. They've signed Safidi, Leo Thompson. They're in the market for Leo Thompson and Ben Hunt, right? Ben Hunt's the other one, the big one for them, that if they can land Ben Hunt, you've got...
It's Hunt, yeah.
It's a fair halves combination.
Yeah, I think that's the big question.
Yeah. The Titans for season 2026, who have they got to go for?
I think they got to let go of, to be honest, Jimmy. They got so much money in their forward pack. Would you they kept David Fafita, they've brought in Regan, they've got Tino coming back, they got Fodawaker, they've got Bo Fermor. There's so much money in their pack. It's the halves that they need to get. And you have to play Jaden Campbell at 6. There's no choice whatsoever because Kinney's your 1. It's who's their 7 long term.
Jimmy, has the game gone past that? You know, Des had that forward-orientated style of play at the Dogs, right? It feels like that's what he's getting back to, this big forward pack that just dominate games, right? And their halves are serviceable. I think the game's gone beyond that. So I don't know. It's going to be they're going to be an interesting team this year.
They are.
Really interesting. Keep your eye to see the way they play.
But Jaden Campbell is not a Desi style half, is he? Like,
no.
If you look at over the years what he's gone
not
with.
Structure. No, he's not.
So he has to adapt the way he coaches to suit that team. And I don't know. I feel like they just need a real, like to them, they haven't got the money, but Ben Hunt for 2 years would be good for them, but they don't have the money. They've spent it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Manly?
Well, obviously, if depending on what happens with Daly, that's going to influence what they do to a large extent. I think Daly will go around in 26.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I think they'll wait and take their time, and Daly will take his time to make a decision.
Back row. A back row partner for Hamoli. That's what they're looking at.
Yeah, well, that's why they were looking at Johnny Bateman. But
Has that fallen over?
I think that's gone cold, yeah.
Didn't sound like it was going anywhere.
No.
The Storm. What have they got to prioritise for 26?
That's them. I don't know.
They're pretty set, right?
They've got Stefano now in the middle.
Yeah.
It's just it's decision making now for Storm. Who is their 1? Who is their 7? And with Hughes, is that's the decision's been made. It's just whether about Pappenhausen or is it Sewer? That's
Doing a great. They put themselves in these great positions. They've done it before when Brandon Smith or Harry Grant, Ryan Pappenhausen or Nico Hines.
Yeah,
they're pretty smart at what they do. The Warriors across the pond. What do they need to do for 26?
God, they've signed 1 million halves. Hey, they've now signed Tanner Boyd. They've got all these.
What else they got? Metcalf, Tamare, Chanel.
Yeah, got a load of these. They're not top tier halves, right? They're just sort of, I don't know. I think they've got to find a half that can take charge of that football team.
They could be in the same predicament as the Knights, where they're like they don't quite know.
Yeah,
and they bumble along for too long, and they don't quite get to the bottom of it.
Easier said than done to solve that problem. There aren't many out there.
No.
What have the Knights got to do in the market?
Well, they got to sort their halves out as well, and that's the big issue. One of the big issues for them.
They need to work out Hastings. He's on too much money to be playing reserve grade. It's just hindering them. So he's either going to play, he's their best 7, or you say, see you later and go now. And that's going to be harder.
Well, they've tried that, though. They've told them you can go.
They're going to have to pay the money then.
Or just say, mate, you're playing. Or
Well, I think he should have probably finished the season, but you get the feeling that selections were being made based on character or
there's every chance they win in Townsville if Jackson Hastings is playing halfback.
What is it?
There's every chance they win in Townsville if Jackson Hastings is playing halfback.
Oh, I don't disagree.
Yeah,
I don't disagree. But as I said, I think that it became a little bit of a popularity contest and didn't help them. Speaking
of the Cowboys, or Townsville rather, the Cowboys, what are they going to do really?
Well, I think they've got to keep Reece Robson. I think that's a priority for them because elite hookers are hard to find. There aren't many around, and he's one of them. So I think that's an issue for them. Aside from that, I think again they're in a pretty good spot. Got great edge back rowers, decent middles. Depending on what happens with Jason Tomalalo and how he goes this year. I think they're in a good spot actually.
Mick, the Eels.
The Eels. I think hooker for the Eels.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know they're looking at Jaden Brayley and they're trying to move players on to make it happen, but I still. They don't want someone that's going to take too much of the ball away from Mitchell Moses. He's a very dominating half, but I feel like you throw a quality hooker into that team, they could be anything. So just working out that dynamic with Mitchell is the key.
Rudy?
As I said, I'd go hard. If I'm them, I'd go hard after Reece Robson. I'd have a red hot go at him because I think they're a hooker away from being a really good football team with Mitch just running the show. Good halves. If the young kid comes through at fullback, Jason wanted to get some speed out wide, and I would have a go at Ronaldo Mulatalo as well. Actually, that's the other one I'd have a red hot go at if I was Parramatta.
Fair play. The Panthers. I mean, there's not really much, is there?
Probably halfback.
Well, he's going to rugby.
The Wallabies.
Yeah, he's going to Wallabies.
I think they're more at looking at season 2027. They've got some upgrades.
Well, it depends how Blaze Talangi goes at 6, right? I mean, if Blaze goes all right at 6 and they're pretty well set there, if he struggles a bit and he ends up in the centres or wherever he ends up.
I think Papali'i will be the buy of the season for him.
Do you?
Yeah.
For the NRL or just them?
Yeah, in the NRL.
Do you really?
I think that they'll get the best out of him.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you'll go well there. Souths, what have they got to do? Obviously, they've got 12 players off contract, a couple of older players as well, with people like Cody Walker, Alex Johnson. What's their market looking like for 26 or the decisions for next year?
Well, they need middles. I think that's pretty obvious. Depends what happens with Davey Mawali, I'd imagine. That might free up some cash for them to go hunting some middles.
I hope I'm wrong, but I think it might be halfback. I think with Ilias, obviously, on the outer, Lewis Dodd, a lot of people not sold on Lewis Dodd. I know, Jimmy, you probably watched him a lot more than we have, but if it doesn't work, and an aging Cody Walker.
Yeah.
And you got Jack White in there, and Jack's been good at 6, but there's no long-term solutions if they can't make it work this year. And I hope I'm wrong, but that's going to be their headache next year if they don't get it right.
The Dragons, mentioned them a lot in this conversation. They've got 12 players off contract. What have they got to do, really?
They need lots, Jimmy. Well, they get some leadership with Gutherson arriving, obviously.
Potentially.
They got a lot to do. They got a lot. There's still a lot of holes in that roster. There's
7. It's got to be the 7. It has to be. At the moment, the halves are Kyle Flanagan.
Well, he'll play. Don't think he'll play 7, right? Well, 7 or 6, right? They need a 7 or a 6.
Yeah, but the kid, he's a great kid, Kyle, and I think he did a serviceable job this year. But I don't think he's the end.
A bit harsh, serviceable. I thought he was outstanding this year for them, Kyle Flanagan.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Look, I feel bad because he's under enormous pressure, and I really like the guy. But I don't. You can't be pinning your hopes on Kyle Flanagan and finding it. You need to find a 7 and look for us. Like, to be honest with you, he's a good backup.
Jordan Pezzett, is he the man for them?
No, he's staying. He's staying.
No.
I don't know who it is, but
I'd
be buying 2 halves if I was the Dragons because I think Kyle is probably your backup option. If
if you're Flano, would you throw 1.4 at Dylan Brown, see if you can get him out of there?
No, can't. I think it's too much money.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's too much for
Sorry,
any
getting fired up of a Dragons.
You are, yeah. Who's your dream signing, Mick?
Well, I don't know who it is because there's
Braden Trindle.
No, I don't think he's the answer for the Dragons either.
Well, can you find someone for them?
Well, there's no one obvious at the moment. There's no one obvious that solves their
Daniel
problems.
Atkinson doesn't excite you?
Nah.
fair play. The Roosters, what's their transfer strategy?
Hooker. Yeah, I think they'll look at a hooker. As I said earlier, I think Brandon's probably moves in a different direction, and centres. Outside backs with Tupou got 1 more year, and they've lost Manu, lost Suwali. Teddy's getting towards the end. They need some outside backs.
Finally, everyone's favourite team.
Tigers. Why are you lumping me with the Tigers, Jimmy?
Well, we'll all have a coach. What are we thinking the Tigers are going to do? Only 9 players off contract.
You know, the spine's actually in a good place.
Yeah.
The spine's not too bad. Everything around it's a bit of a worry, but the spine's not in a bad spot. Again, they need middles, centres.
Centres, definitely.
Wingers.
I actually don't think their forward pack's too bad.
Yeah.
They need to retain Galvin. That's their number one objective.
That's the big thing, isn't it? Retain the quality of.
Well, he's got 2 years left. When's he off? He'll
be available this time next year.
This time next year. Yeah.
They've got 12 months to tie him down.
Yeah.
And he's not on a lot of money. And I just think, I don't.
He's on reasonable money given they signed that deal before he played the first grade game.
He's not on minimum wage, but if he was on the open market right now, he'd get more probably. But I still think Lockie Galvin's there.
They're number 1.
That's 12 months to lock him down, get Luai in his ear, convince him the place is going somewhere. Because if it's not, then there are a lot of people out the door, including the coach. Yeah, this time next year could be very interesting for the Tigers.
When isn't it, Jimmy? Interesting for the Tigers.
Well, that's true. That is true. All right, we'll wrap it up there, gents. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Buy Round November 1 special. Brent Reid, Michael Chammas, thank you so much.
Cheers, Jimmy.